Do you know how you, in the beginning, were really open about your experience as a teacher, like, how you were basically bullied? Did it take you a long time to be open with people like that?
Believe it or not, no. It was quite the opposite. I've got a border collie dog who has been around in my life for 11 years now, and she got me out. I carried on walking my dog. My dog never was sacrificed just because of my own mental health. Probably that's a huge part of, why I didn't go down a very dark route because I wasn't suicidal, but I definitely had those thoughts of what if, but I never crossed my mind to actually go and do it or even take it to that next step. But Flossie got me out. My dog's called Flossie, would be on the dog park, and I would be very open to the people that I met. I think it came to a point was, you can see it on people's body language. Oh, here we go again. Or the eyes would roll, even some very close people in my life, they don't understand the journey. They don't get it. They don't understand the psychological effects of it. I would have rather somebody punched me in the face, because at least I would have known where I stood with somebody, right? But when people are playing a mental game with you, you second guess everything. But I was very, very open, I think. But the problem with being open, when you vent every day, when you go to sleep and you open up the next day, you've released those, I suppose you can class them as undesired emotions, undesired, even though they're still very important and they're a part of our survival. The modern day would perceive the sadness, the fear, the anger as undesired emotions, right? But when you vent, you release those emotions through the system, and it's very important. But if you don't change that darkness into a purpose, and you don't cross that line of coming away from it, if you don't take the emotion out of trauma, it never becomes wisdom. So I've learned to do over a very long time is take the emotion out of the trauma, and then you can turn it into wisdom. And that's when you can start to go in the right direction. The book was part of that journey. Even going through that next toxic environment was part of that journey. And the podcast was certainly a part of that journey. But I was very open. But the problem, again, being open, what I didn't mention, you vent the next day and you repeat the cycle. And all you're doing is releasing those undesired emotions for that particular day. And when you reset, it starts again. So look, I was very, very open. The problem was I was very open for a very long time, but I didn't turn it into anything. That was the key. So that's when my body had to go through what it went through, because that's when it made. There's a quote from this book, actually. Change only occurs when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of making a change. But when you're almost, I suppose, dead, what greater point can you that's a great point to start a change, right? I mean, what do you have to go through any more than that, I guess? So I don't know. Yeah, so to answer your question, I was very, very, very open, but that probably hindered me in a different way.
So you mentioned there, if you don't, excuse me, so you mentioned there, if you don't do anything with it, you're basically regurgitating the same thing over and over again. So when did you realize, oh, I'm just doing the same thing over and over again, and I need to start being more productive. I don't know, like, where did productive, is that right word? And being proactive.
I know what you mean. I know what you're getting at. Yeah, no, I think the March 22, when I went into hospital and I saw the effects on my family, the potential results of me not being there the next day with my family was the change. When I realized about the emotions, when I started to read about the brain, the human physiology, food, sleep, exercise, nutrition, preventative approaches to, diseases and cognitive decline, etc. That's when I started to learn about my reflection of all those days at the dog parks, me just being open. I was releasing those undesired emotions every day, which is very good, but it was never the catalyst to change. I did need to go through something probably a lot worse. And that hospital visit in March 22 was probably worse than the bullying. But it was a matter of days, right? Whereas the bullying's months upon months, daily stress, chronic stress. And that's really what probably led up to it. But so, yeah, the turning point was, I would say, March, April 22.